Imagine a year when the sun lost its light, a year shrouded in a mysterious fog that refused to lift. This isn't a scene from a fantasy novel. This was the reality for people across the globe in 536 AD, a year many historians call the single worst year to be alive. What happened? For centuries, the cause was a baffling mystery. But today, we're going to journey back in time, piece together the clues from ancient texts and modern science, and uncover the story of the cataclysm that plunged the world into darkness. Part 1. The Strange Sky. It began without warning. In the spring of 536, a strange, dense fog descended upon Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia. But this was no ordinary fog. The Byzantine historian Procopius, writing from Constantinople, described it with chilling clarity. He wrote, "For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during this whole year." He noted this dim light persisted for an entire year, and people were constantly afraid, wondering what it meant. It wasn't just him. Cassiodorus, a Roman politician in Italy, wrote about the unsettling sky. He noted the absence of shadows at noon, the weakness of the sun's heat, and a strange bluish tint to the sun itself. Farmers looked to the sky in despair as their crops, starved of sunlight, began to fail. In Ireland, the Gaelic Annals recorded a failure of bread from the year 536. Half a world away in China, dynastic histories reported summer snow and widespread frost, leading to massive crop failures and famine. From Mesoamerica to Scandinavia, the story was the same. The sky had changed, the world had grown cold, and life was becoming a struggle for survival. People at the time had no explanation. They feared it was a divine punishment, a sign of the apocalypse. They couldn't know that the cause was a natural disaster of unimaginable scale, one that had originated thousands of miles away. Part 2. Global Disaster. The dimming of the sun was just the beginning. The mystery fog, a persistent stratospheric aerosol veil, triggered a cascade of global disasters. The most immediate effect was a dramatic drop in temperature. Average summer temperatures in the northern hemisphere plummeted by as much as 2.5 degrees Celsius, initiating the coldest decade in over 2,000 years. This sudden climate change was catastrophic. In China, the Northern Wei dynasty faced such severe famine that historical texts say 80% of the population in some regions starved. People resorted to desperate measures to survive. In Scandinavia, archaeological evidence suggests a massive societal collapse. Villages were abandoned, and there's a notable increase in buried gold hoards from this period, interpreted by some as desperate offerings to appease angry gods and bring back the sun's warmth. The social fabric began to tear apart. Famine breeds desperation, and desperation leads to conflict. Communities that once traded peacefully now likely raided each other for scarce resources. The political landscape was destabilized. Governments, unable to feed their people or explain the terrifying celestial phenomena, lost their authority. The world of 536 AD was a world gripped by fear, hunger, and chaos. The prolonged cold and darkness seemed endless. No one could have predicted that this great winter was just the prelude to an even more devastating blow that was about to strike a weakened and vulnerable humanity. The interconnectedness of this global crisis was profound. The volcanic dust didn't care for borders or empires, and its impact was felt by nearly everyone on the planet, setting the stage for one of history's darkest chapters. Part 3. The Aftermath. The immediate crisis of 536 and the years that followed was brutal, but the long-term consequences were arguably even more profound, reshaping the course of history. The weakened, malnourished populations across the globe were incredibly vulnerable to disease. And in 541 AD, just a few years after the initial dimming of the sun, one of the deadliest pandemics in human history erupted, the Justinian Plague. The plague, caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, arrived in the Byzantine Empire, likely through grain ships from Egypt. In a world already weakened by famine, the disease spread like wildfire. Procopius, our eyewitness historian, described the horrifying symptoms and the sheer scale of death in Constantinople, where at its peak, the plague was killing thousands of people every single day. He wrote that bodies were piled up in the streets, as there was no one left to bury them. The Justinian plague is estimated to have killed between 25 to 50 million people, perhaps a quarter of the world's population at the time. It ravaged the Byzantine Empire, halting Emperor Justinian's ambitions to reconquer the Western Roman Empire and severely weakening the state for generations. The economic and demographic collapse was immense. Trade routes withered, cities shrank, and vast areas of farmland were abandoned, returning to wilderness. This period of cold, famine, plague, and social upheaval is now known as the Late Antique Little Ice Age. It marked a definitive break from the classical world of Rome and ushered in the early Middle Ages, or what was once called the Dark Ages. The vibrant, interconnected world of late antiquity was fractured, replaced by smaller, more isolated kingdoms, struggling to survive in a harsher, colder world. The catastrophe of 536 wasn't just a bad year. It was a turning point that sent humanity down a different path. Part 4. The Mystery Solved. For over 1400 years, the cause of the 536 AD disaster remained a mystery. Ancient writers could only describe the effects, attributing them to divine wrath or unknowable forces. The puzzle pieces were scattered across time and around the globe. The solution would not come from dusty archives, but from a much colder place, the ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica. In the 1990s, scientists drilling deep into these glaciers began to analyze ice cores. These cores are like frozen history books, with each layer of ice representing a single year's snowfall. Trapped within these layers are microscopic particles from the atmosphere, including volcanic ash and sulfate deposits. As scientists analyzed the layers corresponding to the mid-6th century, they found a stunning confirmation. The ice from 536 AD contained a dense layer of volcanic glass shards and exceptionally high levels of sulfates. This was the smoking gun. It proved that a massive volcanic eruption, or possibly a series of eruptions, had occurred. The chemical signature of the tephra, or volcanic debris, pointed towards a volcano in the northern hemisphere. Further research, published in 2018 by a team led by archaeologist Michael McCormick and glaciologist Paul Majewski, pinpointed a likely culprit, a colossal eruption in Iceland in early 536. The analysis didn't stop there. The ice cores revealed a second major eruption in 540 AD and another in 547 AD. This volcanic triple whammy explains why the cooling and hardship were so prolonged. A single eruption might have caused a year or two of cooling, but three major events in just over a decade plunged the planet into the sustained late antique Little Ice Age. Suddenly, the disparate accounts made sense. The mysterious fog described by Procopius was a sulfuric acid aerosol veil blasted into the stratosphere by the volcano, reflecting sunlight back into space. The summer snows in China, the crop failures in Ireland, and the famines worldwide were all direct consequences of this volcanic winter. Tree ring data from around the world corroborated the story, showing a dramatic slowdown in growth starting in 536. Science had finally solved the 1,400-year-old mystery, revealing how a single geological event on one part of the planet could trigger global catastrophe, topple empires, and create the worst year to be alive. The story of 536 AD is a sobering reminder of our planet's power and the fragility of human civilization in the face of it. Thank you for joining us on this journey back to one of history's darkest years. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, Please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. Let us know in the comments what historical mystery you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for watching.